Today guys, we're going to be doing part 2 of my video series of how I make my videos. Let's get into it. So what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Alright, today is going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited because I have a special guest. As you saw in the thumbnail, you know who it is. But before we get into that, let's talk about what we're going to cover in today's video. So part 1, if you had not seen it, it's on my channel. But basically, that's where I just show you how I create my drum patterns, lay down the guitar, and the bass for my demo tracks. I get it all down on the grid, and now it's time to mix it and create a final product. So this video is all about workflow, efficiency, and time effectiveness. The steps I take to get a mixing session done as fast as possible and create an awesome product. But before I give my 2 cents, let's get into our special guest, the man, one of the funniest cats on YouTube. If you've not seen his channel, I'll put a link down below, but I'm sure you guys know who this is. The man, the meme lord himself, Rudy Ayoub. Take it away.
Hey, my name's Rudy Ayoub, and I have a channel where I post dumb guitar stuff most of the time. But when I'm not posting dumb guitar stuff, I just, you know, write music. But just like everybody else, I'm pretty much self-taught. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, even now. But I do, however, have a workflow that I stick to, and this is what I'm going to be sharing with you because Ray told me to share it with you. Anyway, so I know that Ray lays out a drum track to write his riffs, and he goes from the inspiration of the drum track. Well, I'm the complete opposite. Everything I do usually stems from a guitar riff idea or a melody idea that I put into a riff, and then I record the riff, I lay out a drum track, and then I lay out a bass track on top of it, and then I would practice the riff till I can play it perfectly to record. But this is where I start implementing more changes into it, and it ends up being a better riff overall. So after I have everything recorded, by the way, I'm not from Oregon, but I found this for $1, so I bought it. So what I do after I have my idea down is I record. I only double track my guitar, so I only have one left and one right. I don't think I ever quad tracked guitars because I just never recorded a real amp. But I think with plugins it's a bit easier to get a good heavy tone with just the right amount of gain, instead of just turning down the gain and quad tracking your guitar so it sounds heavier. And another thing that I found really helped my workflow was I found a guitar tone that I liked. I have a preset that I use. I spent maybe an hour setting the preset up, and then after that I just don't touch it because it's a waste of time. Finding your tone, as good and fun as it is just a waste of time. It doesn't get you anywhere with your music or with your song. It just gets you more options to get confused with. So yeah, so I don't touch my tone. I have 2 tracks recorded, and I have 1 bass tone that I use most of the time, and I just lay it on top. This is how I get my songs done, and I don't think my workflow has been an issue or an obstacle. I know most of you have a similar workflow. I know some people record their riffs on the phone. I know some people just record some ideas and then pick the best ones. I haven't really done that. I just wait for the idea to come and I just record it, and then I go from there. But yeah, this is pretty much it. I don't know if this was useful to anyone. If it was, then good. I just think everyone has the same workflow because I'm just assuming because I don't have friends. But I assume everyone has the same workflow because I've seen it a lot. But yeah, thank you for having me. This was very fun. Now back to you.
Guys, seriously, if you've not seen his channel, he's one of the funniest dudes, and then it just so happens that he's also hilarious, but will blow the doors off of any guitar player, man. It's so talented, so awesome. Check him out. I guarantee you'll love his channel. Link down below. Thanks, man. Thanks for doing that for me. I really appreciate it. How do I mix my songs? As a guitar player, very egotistical. I start with the guitars, right? I mean, that's only fair. A lot of people do top-down stuff where they do the full mix and then tweak individually. I don't really like to do that just because I like to just go in segments and then work backwards. I know it maybe not be as efficient, but it's just what I like to do, and it's just kind of, this is what I do. I don't know. So for guitars, bass, drums, vocals, whatever, I try to do as minimal tweaking as possible, and I try to get it to sound good at the source. I said it in part 1, but when you start to tweak things and you start to listen over and over again and start to tweak minimal things, you start to lose sight of the grand picture, and you literally suffer from ear fatigue, which is something that I didn't even really know existed. But when you have ear fatigue, your body gets tired, your brain gets tired, your ears get tired, and you start to hear things almost that aren't really there, and then when you take a break and you come back to it, and then you listen to it, you're like, oh my god, it sounds nothing like the original intent. For me, it's all about just doing very minimal stuff, get it to sound good from the beginning, and then tweak as needed to add flavor. So for the guitars, I'm going to say I'm using the Fortin plugins. The Fortin plugins are amazing, you guys all know that. Let's say I'm using them for this example. I'll have 2 tracks or 4 tracks depending on the project, but for any of those tracks, 90% of the time, I don't have any plugins or any inserts on those channels. Back in the day, man, I just tried to have as many as possible because I thought that was what you're supposed to do. So you're supposed to have a high pass, low pass, multi-presser, and then you're supposed to, you know, let's see, put some virtual mix rack on there, and then you're supposed to compress again, and then I used to do all that, and then it would just eat up all my CPU on my computer, and then it wouldn't even sound any different, or it would sound terrible. What I do now is I leave the tracks completely untouched, 100%, don't put any inserts on them, and send them to a bus using the track stack method in Logic. Track stack in Logic basically is just the ability to create a bus, but it condenses them, and then it just creates a big giant track in layman's terms, a big giant bus, and then you put the inserts on there. Usually 99 to 100% of the time I add maybe 2 or 3 plugins on the bus of my guitars. First thing I always do is the EQ, stock Logic EQ. I have a high pass at about between 80 and 100 hertz, and then the low pass is usually around 12K. Not doing any sort of virtuoso mixing ideas with that, right? I mean, that's pretty standard, everybody does that, right? But hey, that's what I do. And then for the little spicing of the EQ, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have a slight bump in the low mids, anywhere from 180 to 300, just a slight little sort of beef added to the guitars. I'll have a dip in the mids at about 500 hertz. Towards the top end, I'll either cut out 5K almost completely because that's that really harsh, brutal sound, or I'll have a slight bump in the mids at around 1 to 2K depending. But it's very, very basic, and my EQ for the most part looks like this. The next and last plugin that I've been using a lot lately is the Joel Wanasek Bus Glue series for guitars. This plugin by Joey Sturgis Tones is really easy, and it's made for people like myself. I'm not an audio engineer. I'm all self-taught. A lot of people are self-taught. Rather than spending time learning different plugins and software and hardware, yes, that's a tool we all need, I think, and I'm still learning to this day. But in terms of efficiency, it's nice when there's a plugin that does the nerdy stuff for you, and you can focus more on creativity rather than being an audio engineer. It's hard enough to think of creative and awesome riffs and songs, and then you have to go in and then mix it. It's all about time, man. Time efficiency. With this plugin, it allows you to be really, really fast. I turn on the Chug Slayer button, which is like a multi-band compressor, bring down the compression just a tad, and then bring down the overall level of the guitars, and you're good to go. I use this plugin series for all my buses. Next, for bass. Bass is very similar. What I do is I'll use 2 plugins for bass. One for the lows, and then one for the highs and the clank. For this example, let's say I use the Dark Glass Ultra plugin by Neural DSP for the lows, and then for the highs I'll use just a stock distortion pedal. I'll copy and paste the original take, the original DI, copy and paste so it's layered, and then I'll throw the distortion onto the actual second track, and then I'll send those again to a summoning track, a bus, in Logic. For EQing on bass, guys, on my bus, I really don't do much at all. I'll just have a high pass, a low cut at about 60 hertz, and then depending on the song, I'll have a low pass at about 5K to 2K, just because I don't want too much top end on my bass because it is the bass. And then I use the Joel Wanasek BG Bass plugin, just like the guitars. This plugin is awesome because it automatically separates the low end and the high end on your bass track. I really squash and compress the low end so it's consistent throughout the entire track. And then for the high end, I really don't compress it much, and I keep it rather dynamic, so when the pick digs in, it kind of has a nice spike and you can hear the clank. And but the whole time the low end's just consistent all the way throughout. The low end's going like this, the high end's coming in behind it like that. I hope that makes sense. And then for drums, guys, I'm using Superior Drummer 3. I didn't play those drums, so I don't even need to, I didn't sample them. I don't need to EQ them. They're already good to go, man. It's all in-house. EQing and compression and limiting and all that stuff. So I just do another summoning track, a track stack for the drums, throw on BG Bus by Joel Wanasek and Joey Sturgis, and then I'll just bring down the level just a little bit and a slight bit of compression, and that's it. That's all I do for drums. I didn't play the drums, man. They're good, man. You guys at Superior Drummer, man, you know what you're doing. I don't. Go ahead. Do your thing. And lastly, guys, this brings us to our stereo out. Now, I've heard in the past that you're supposed to do a master bus before the stereo out. I've done that in the past, and it didn't really do anything for me. It didn't. I'll just be honest. I didn't really see the need to. So I just put all my final plugins onto my stereo out. Very simple. I don't like to muddy up my final mix, because I've heard, and it is true, that if you're trying to do some major tweakings at the end on your master fader, your master bus, your stereo out, whatever you want to call it, then you've got problems. This is just for like the final like 5%. All the other stuff should have been taken care of long before you get to this portion of your mixing. So all I do, guys, is just a slight EQ. I do a low cut at about 30 Hertz just because that's like the subsonic frequencies that you can't really hear, but when they start to build up, they start to create muddiness and you lose clarity in the low end, and it overpowers your mix. And then I just roll off the extreme high end at about like 17 to 14K, somewhere around there, 14 to 17. Just because that once you get past 12, I feel like you get some super high, crinkly, gritty, brittle sounds that I like to kind of tame that. Next, I use the Joel Wanasek mix bus, and basically that's just to glue your mix in, man. There's different ways to use this plugin. There's got a lot of different built-in stuff with the different transformers and the no small time button, which is kind of like a little bit of limiting and mastering goodies, as Joel Wanasek calls it. Just do a little bit of compression and then bring down the overall level. I don't like to compress my tracks a lot because, especially when you have a fixed time attack and release on these plugins where you can't alter it yourself, if you have like a fast part, it'll start to come in and out. The volume will be all over the place. So I like to do a lot of subtlety stuff with this whole mix bus series. And so I just use it just to kind of kiss my final mix. And the last plugin, guys, I use on my mix is the FabFilter limiter. This I use to just bring down the overall level but increase the drive and the output, because when I didn't use this stuff, I wouldn't use any sort of limiting, and then I would try to master it with a different plugin, which I'll get to. What would happen was it just wouldn't be as loud, man. I think of it as like a compressor almost. I'm bringing the track from going like this to just like this, you know what I mean? Leveling everything out, rather than having it be all over the place or not being loud at all. So I'll just kind of like add about 4 dB of gain and then bring the output threshold to about -4, so it kind of evens it out. That's it, guys. That's all I do for my mixing. I know there's a lot of different things you guys can do, you know, go down the rabbit hole and talk about how to mix things and how to like just go on forever adding plugins and inserts, but I'm not an engineer. I'm still self-teaching myself, and for right now, rather than trying to learn a whole bunch of things at once, right now I don't think I need that many different plugins. I'm focusing more on songwriting and interesting content for you guys, rather than just putting on all these different plugins just for the sake of doing it, because I see all of the other audio engineers doing it. So that's all I do for mixing. Now the last step that you have to do is, quote, mastering. Now I'm not a mastering engineer. I don't send my mixes off to any sort of mastering personnel or anything. I use one plugin. The plugin I use for mastering today is Ozone 8. It does all the work for you. I'm not a mastering engineer, again. I know it could be like cheating or, you know, just easy way out. Totally get it. I'm not saying I know everything. I just use the Ozone 8, go to the master assistant, and then let it do its thing, man, and it is good to go. And that, guys, is how I mix my stuff. It's very minimalistic. Again, guys, I don't like to just muddy up everything with a bunch of different inserts and plugins. I focus more on the take, the song, the structure, and the overall tone going into my interface, rather than trying to fix it in post and going down that rabbit hole of trying to add in a million different plugins and tweak the littlest thing. Guys, I hope you found this informative and informational, educational. If you liked it, please like and share. Hit that subscribe button if you're brand new. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. A huge thank you to Rudy. Again, link down below. Dude's so funny, man. You guys will get a kick out of him. He's great, man. I love his channel. Alright, guys, I'm out of here. Stay metal, and I'll see you guys next time.